Speed Ads Garage. Welcome back to an episode of Speed Ads Garage. If you're new to this channel, my name is Demetrius Hall. I'm a car enthusiast, been working on cars ever since high school. My passion has turned into a very serious hobby where I help others out. And on this episode, I'm hoping that we're gonna be able to do something that is somewhat rare. Maybe it's not rare. Comment below if this is popular. But we get the opportunity to work on another K-powered vehicle. It is Honda, and I will explain to you what it is after I show you what we'll be doing. Yeah. This is gonna be in the up and soon episode. This is the 240. I got something back, and yeah, we will be installing this or putting this back together coming real soon. Hopefully within next month. Stick around. Wow, check out what we got here. This, believe it or not, fellas, ladies and gentlemen, if we got any females on the channel, this here is an OEM S2000 header. It is bolted up to, if any of my Honda guys are familiar, it's not bolted up to the motor that comes in the S2000. It's bolted up to actually a K series. Evidently, if your F20 blow up in your S2000, another option that you can do as far as a swap is a K series motor, K20, K24. And from the owner of this setup, shout out Juan Santos, from what he has told me based on his research, all the aftermarket header options are okay, but out of all options, this OEM S2000 header is actually the most beneficial as far as torque and horsepower. With that being said, look at it. It's pretty obvious. The runners are pretty daggone big. They look pretty much equal length. Each runner goes into 2 collectors, and then we got both of these big primary tubes or whatever going into this humongous Y, and this looks like, with the naked eye, 2.5. So with this particular setup, we need to modify the S2000 header to work with the K series in an S2000 engine bay. Right now we got this thing bolted up, we got this bolted up. Let me flip it around so I can show you what the problem is. So the reason we got to modify it is that, and that. When you bolt this thing up in the S2000 chassis with the K series engine, it's actually touching the block. So Juan told me that all we got to do is basically just kind of kick this out about a ½ an inch or so. With that being done, we'll actually have a little bit of space in between the block and the headers, and we'll go from there. I'm gonna show you my approach on seeing if we can get this thing situated. First things first, we need to make what we call a jig. A jig is something that I can use for a reference so that when I modify it, I have a point of reference to go back to. In this particular case, I think what I want to do is I want to make something that bolts up to this thermostat housing on these 2 bolt heads here, and then I want to stretch over and touch right here on the back side of this header where it's touching it. That way, when I chop the flange off or cut it or whatever and move it, I can measure that distance, and that'll give me a good idea if we're in the ballpark. We will go a step further. We will go a step further and tack it up, and then have one install on the car to make sure that clearance is appropriate, so that when he brings it back, we can fully weld it. Also, we are welding this MIG, not TIG in this particular case. This was already MIG welded to start with, and I think we're gonna MIG weld it to end with. So the first thing we need to do is find us some material so we can make a jig. All right, I found this piece of thick, maybe a 1/4 inch thick, roughly inch and a half in width. Think I can take this, drill 2 holes, cut it to length, and then run a piece maybe diagonal like that. scrap metal pile, I use this little piece of box steel. It's gonna go there to be my point of reference as far as where it's touching. And I'm just gonna take this rod and put it in between. I cut a little angle on it, but to be honest with you, to make a jig like this, a one-time type of deal, it ain't got to be pretty. But I'm gonna make it a little bit pretty, a little bit. This is what we're gonna be using to join those pieces together. It's a Eastwood MIG 175, and it does take 220. They got this little chart right here based on the gas bottle using, the diameter of the wire, and also based on the thickness. So based on this, I think I might try somewhere around the E or the F as far as the heat range, and then the number is the wire speed. So you saw I ended up using that great big old C-clamp to clamp these two together. The reason being is when I tack this up or start welding that, it actually starts pulling away. So I wanted to make sure I use something to secure it so that when I weld it, it won't pull. Now I've released it and we have no gap. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and take all these bolts off, remove this exhaust manifold, and I need to basically separate the flange from these runners. I may cut it all the way, or what I was thinking about doing is cutting it from the bottom all the way up, leaving like a little meat on the top. That way, all I have to do is kind of pull it, basically pull it, and then I can use the MIG welder to tack the bottom, and then we can test fit. So let's do that. So before we do any welding, we need to clean up this surface. And then we also need to clean up the outside edges, the inside edges, and then we need to remove the paint, probably about that much, so that we can have a clean spot to weld. It's hard to show this on camera, but this don't line up exactly perfect. Of course, with us using the MIG welder, we can fill in the blanks and then kind of use the carbide bit to make it work. I also can do a little manipulating of the pipes. Like for example, if I take something and put in between here and separate it, it looks like the two runners kind of need to be opened up a smidge. But to be honest with you, I think this gonna work. So I'll basically, out of all four runners, the outside runners line up the best. So as you can tell, I've tacked the top of it. That way, again, I can just literally lift up on it to get my distance. I'll actually probably put something in there to wedge it. But again, the middle two runners got a gap here and a gap here. To be honest with you, we could probably weld that up and then go back in the inside with a carbide bit. But I'm gonna see if I can try to finagle this somehow where I can kind of separate it. I don't want to separate it and then weld it with tension because that's how you get cracking. But I do want to see if I can maybe do something to it and then it stays kind of separated so that we can kind of get rid of this gap as much as possible. This is about maybe 3/8, so I give them a little bit. Let's see if we can wedge that in between there without breaking our tacks. And that's our gap after we removed our Craftsman ratchet. I think I'm satisfied with that. And I think I'm satisfied with that. So the only thing we got left to do is hit Juan up, let him install this on this S2000 to see if we have any more clearance issues. And once he lets us know that it's good to go, all we gotta do is weld it up and then pour the inside of it.
1 week later.
All right, fam. I don't know where we're at on this S2000 K swap with the S2000 header, but we've having to start from scratch. I got the car here. We've tack welded this manifold up twice, tried to test fit it. It just ain't gonna work unless the car is here. So today we're gonna start the process on making a S2000 header work with the K swap in the S2000, if that makes any sense. This is the manifold that I was working with. A lot of the fat has been trimmed so it's easy to install. And then on top of that, before I got this manifold, it's already been cut back, tampered, blah, blah, blah. So we got another OEM header. I'm glad that he found this because one thing I noticed is, as you can tell on the outside of the flange, it's tacked on the outside, but it's welded and smoothed on the inside. I mean, Honda killed it when they made this daggone OEM header. I mean, look at it. It's a two, what is it? Two primaries going into a merge collector ×2. Then these things right here look like about 2 1/4, maybe 2 1/2, and then they go to this humongous freaking merge right here. So they killed it on this. We're gonna see if we can make the other one work, but I think I might want to start from scratch. So let's take the other manifold off and see what it looks like compared to the S2000. Excuse me, we're gonna take off the K series flange and see what it looks like up against this F20 flange. All right, so this is facing me. So it's gonna go like this. As you can tell, man, this junk don't line up at all. The outside 1 and 4 line up, but the inside need to be like spread out, spread open. You know what I'm saying? So I think acetylene torch is gonna be involved, but we can at least get the outsides fitted up. The under part of that heat shield got some kind of like, maybe it's like some, oh, you know what? It's probably like some kind of dampening material. It looks like a foam that's been like secured. But this foam, don't that junk look like it's got COVID? That junk look mildewy. Bet it stink. No, I don't smell bad. The plasma cutter of choice is, of course, an Amazon special. It's called War Fox. It has air that comes in through the back. And then you got these knobs on the front. One of them is to adjust the air pressure. This one is to adjust the amps. I think it go up to 45 max. And then this knob here is like how much time or seconds, time in seconds that you want it to blow.
Raider.
All right, fam, we're back over at the garage. I have heated these runners up, beat them, massaged them, and I mean, to be honest with you, this is about as good as we're gonna get. I'm not gonna spend no more time on it, but it is a lot better than before. These three runners are for the most part close. This one looked like I need to kind of use a little leverage or something to kind of bend it that direction. But also another thing too, after heating and bending it, they're not kind of even anymore. So I'm gonna go across here, cut these, and then we'll see if we can kind of mate it up to this flange. This is the bottom. So we got clearance in between the transmission. Well, excuse me, we got clearance in between the motor and the header. The transmission and the header is not touching over here on the chassis. And then with this donut style flange, this is good enough to daggone bolt up. All right, fam, we're down to the end. I put this thing on a belt sander to try to sand it down as much as possible. To be honest with you, my daggone right arm hurt from trying to do this. I mean, I should probably go ahead and try to hit this as much as I can. But to be honest, on this particular build or this particular situation, as far as making this all work, we basically, I basically did what I could with what I had, meaning that this is a factory flange. This is an OEM S2000 header. And between the two, I've resurfaced this thing. I mean, it's already daggone thin. I would say in the future, if you want to do something like this, get a brand new K series flange. It's a whole lot thicker. It's gonna be a lot less capable, or it's gonna basically not warp as much. And hey, this is the best I can do. I've opened up all these areas, kind of hit it with the carbide bit, smooth it out as much as I feel is necessary. And now the last thing I want to do is I want to cut these ears off. When I had this installed, these were kind of close to the chassis. I know he's gonna paint this whole thing. So as far as heat shielding go, I don't think it's gonna matter. So we're gonna go ahead and cut these ears off, put it on, and show you the final product. And it looks like in order to make the K work with the S2000, there is an adapter plate. I don't know too much about this setup, but it looks like there is an adapter plate. There is possibly a custom flywheel that goes with it. It looks like we have possibly an aftermarket mount. Got a little grease, oh snap. Yeah, I got to tell my boy about that so he can address that. But yeah, overall, check that out. All we got to do is move the exhaust over, get some hardware, and this mug is done. And again, we got clearance in between the block and the header, the chassis and the header. We're not touching anywhere up under here. So there's only one thing to do, get this mess out of here. That's gonna do it for making a S2000 header work for a K-swapped S2k. If you like this kind of content, like, subscribe, Check out some of my other videos where I do turbo, super stuff, and Monte Carlo. And in the meantime, I love you.